Day 68. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. The FBI just extracted a deleted 27-second clip from Google's back-end servers. This changes everything we thought we knew about the night she vanished. The digital footprint was supposed to be completely gone. The intruder believed no cloud subscription meant no evidence. They were wrong. The time is precisely 1:47 a.m. The security system at the Catalina Foothills home goes entirely dark. The house sits vulnerable in the quiet Arizona desert. Homeowners buy these cameras thinking they are impenetrable shields. They sleep soundly, believing technology watches the perimeter. The perpetrator understood this specific system perfectly. They knew exactly how to sever the connection. They bypassed physical locks and targeted the digital eyes. The camera goes offline instantly. The feed stops dead. The house is completely blind. But technology possesses a hidden memory. Systems leave microscopic traces. The FBI Cyber Division knows this reality. They do not rely on standard user interfaces. They dig deep into the architecture of the servers. They force the system to yield its ghost data. A 27-second clip emerges from the digital void. It shows a figure approaching the door. It shows deliberate intent. It shows a chilling level of preparation. The central question is no longer just where Nancy is. The question is how a detail missed by everyone on a deleted camera feed holds the key to her survival. Her pacemaker is ticking constantly. Her medication is entirely gone. Time is the absolute enemy here. The desert environment is unforgiving. The stakes escalate rapidly with every passing hour. A high-profile family waits for a ransom call that makes absolutely no sense. The public watches every single update. The FBI races against biological limits. The clock is running out on Nancy. The cyber task force operates in sterile rooms. They parse lines of code while a family suffocates in panic. The contrast is incredibly sharp. A grandmother's life hinges on packet loss and server logs. The Catalina Foothills are vast and treacherous. Searching them by foot is a logistical nightmare. The terrain hides its secrets very well. The digital realm operates differently. It records every single anomaly. The 1:47 a.m. blackout was a massive anomaly. The intruder was meticulous. They wore a mask to hide their face. They brought a weapon. They weaponized the environment itself. They made one critical assumption. They assumed deleting the local feed erased the server ping. They completely underestimated federal cyber forensics. Google's back-end systems process billions of requests daily. The FBI isolated the exact moment the home network was breached. They successfully recovered frames of video. The images are grainy, but the implication is crystal clear. This was not a random burglary. This was a highly targeted strike aimed at a vulnerable target. The investigation has shifted from a physical grid search to a digital manhunt. To track this countdown with me the second it breaks, hit subscribe. The night of January 31st started without any major incident. Tommaso Cioni drove his mother-in-law home. He dropped her off safely at exactly 10 p.m. She walked through the garage doors alone. That is the very last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie. She is 84 years old. She relies heavily on a pacemaker. She requires daily medication to survive. She vanished into the cold desert night before sunrise. Local law enforcement responded immediately. The Pima County Sheriff's Department launched a massive search operation. Drones mapped the surrounding area. Search dogs tracked scents into the thick brush. The physical search yielded absolutely nothing. The narrative exploded onto the national media stage. Savannah Guthrie leveraged her massive television platform. The NBC Today Show co-host mobilized millions of dedicated viewers. A $1 million reward was immediately established. The financial incentive is staggering. The pressure on local police is unprecedented. Tips flooded the dedicated hotlines. Armchair detectives flooded the internet forums. The family issued desperate public pleas. The physical perimeter of the home showed no obvious signs of forced entry. The doors were completely secured. The windows were entirely intact. The initial theory pointed toward a tragic medical emergency. Perhaps she wandered off alone. Perhaps she became severely disoriented in the dark. The desert terrain is brutal. An 84-year-old woman without her medication cannot travel far on foot. The physical evidence did not match the wandering theory. The established timeline did not make logical sense. The family panicked outside while the investigators looked inside. The frantic search party scoured the dry landscape. The helicopters circled endlessly above. The national media set up their satellite trucks. The background noise was deafening. The public speculation was rampant. But the most chilling answer sat quietly inside the security system by the front door. The hardware held a violent secret. The missing frames told a story of a calculated intrusion. The modern smart home projects a massive illusion. Millions of Americans install digital doorbells. They bolt the hardware to the frame. They connect the device to their local network. They feel entirely secure. They ignore the monthly subscription fee. They believe the live feed offers enough protection. This is a fatal miscalculation. The security apparatus becomes a fragile glass shield. The device physically registers motion but refuses to store the memory. The hardware sees the threat but remains entirely silent. The suspect targeting the Catalina Foothills property understood this flaw. They actively exploited this exact vulnerability. The initial system shutdown occurred earlier that night. The house was successfully plunged into digital darkness. The physical perimeter was seemingly compromised. The network architecture tells a vastly different story. The device logic attempts to function even when disabled. The motion sensors remain hyperactive. The physical lens captures the light. The internal processor compiles the data. The system desperately tries to communicate with the central server. The lack of a paid storage plan creates a digital bottleneck. The video packet is compiled but officially discarded. The user interface shows absolutely nothing. The app on a smartphone registers zero activity. The local police find no usable footage on site. The trail appears completely dead. The cyber division of the federal government operates on a different plane. They do not accept the user interface as reality. The data exists somewhere in the ether. The transmission creates a microscopic ripple. Google servers process unimaginable amounts of daily traffic. The task force zeroes in on the specific IP address. They isolate the traffic originating from the desert perimeter. They look for the discarded packets. They hunt for the ghost data. This is a highly specialized digital excavation. The process is incredibly tedious. The stakes are unimaginably high. An elderly target is out of time. The investigators push past the consumer barriers. They access the raw server logs. They locate a fragmented transmission. The timestamp reads precisely 2:12 a.m. The system detected movement long after the initial blackout. The hardware tried to upload a visual record. The server rejected the file. The fragment remained trapped in the back-end architecture. The federal technicians carefully rebuild the corrupted file. They stitch the digital fragments together. The recovery process takes agonizing hours. The public search continues fruitlessly outside. The real breakthrough happens on a glowing monitor. The cyber team finally stabilizes the video file. The resolution is poor. The frame rate is extremely low. The 27 seconds of footage begin to play. The digital void finally gives up its secret. The illusion of the secure smart home is completely shattered. The unseen threat is suddenly materialized on the screen. The investigation pivots violently from a missing persons case. The cyber reality confirms the absolute worst fears. The perimeter was breached. The timeline is established. The digital ghost provides the only reliable witness. The recovered footage is silent. The visual impact is absolutely paralyzing. A solitary figure enters the frame at 2:12 a.m. The suspect moves with terrifying purpose. The approach is entirely calculated. The individual is fully masked. The identity is completely concealed. This is not a frantic burglary. The behavior indicates severe premeditation. The suspect requires both hands for the operation. A heavy flashlight is clamped firmly in their mouth. The beam cuts sharply through the desert darkness. The illumination reveals a horrifying detail. The suspect carries a visible firearm. The weapon rests securely at their waist. The intent is explicitly violent. The preparation is chilling. The figure steps directly toward the camera lens. The suspect knows exactly where the digital eye is located. The attempt to blind the system is highly specific. The intruder does not use a cloth. They do not use a gloved hand. They do not use heavy tape. The suspect utilizes the natural environment. They wield a thick piece of local prairie brush. They jam the dry branches directly into the lens. This specific choice is deeply unsettling. The use of native foliage is a calculated forensic countermeasure. A cloth leaves microscopic fibers, a hand leaves residual oils. Tape leaves adhesive patterns and partial prints. The prairie brush leaves absolutely nothing. The desert provides the perfect sterile tool. The branches scratch the plastic housing without leaving traceable biological material. This tactical decision sparks massive debate. The execution suggests highly specialized training. The suspect acts like a seasoned professional. They move with military precision. They understand forensic transfer. They anticipate the digital countermeasures. They exploit the physical environment perfectly. The execution is flawless. The preparation is immaculate. The target is an 84-year-old grandmother. The logic completely fractures here. A highly trained operative targeting a fragile widow makes zero sense. The resources deployed do not match the perceived victim. The level of tactical sophistication is terrifying. The visual of the masked figure with the prairie brush is burned into the investigation. The 27 seconds end abruptly. The brush obscures the lens entirely. The screen goes completely black. The digital witness is finally silenced. The cyber extraction provides the face of the threat. The footage confirms the armed intrusion. The suspect is real. The danger is imminent. The camera caught the exact moment of arrival. The lens captured the tactical preparation. The digital eye saw the weapon. The system recorded the methodical blinding process. The digital perimeter was breached with terrifying efficiency. The suspect entered the home. The footage stops there. The visual record is entirely incomplete. The camera shows how the nightmare started. The lens captured the clinical approach. The true horror lies just outside the frame. The digital evidence is clean and precise. The physical reality of the desert night is much darker. The camera caught the arrival. The scene left behind tells a significantly more violent story. The recovered video halts. The digital record abruptly ends. The physical violence merely begins. Law enforcement secures the property immediately. They string the yellow tape across the Catalina Foothills estate. Crime scene technicians arrive in full protective gear. They illuminate the front porch with heavy halogen lights. The sterile glow reveals a devastating physical reality. Deep red stains mark the concrete near the entrance. The substance is quickly swabbed and rushed for preliminary testing. The results return with terrifying speed. The substance is confirmed human blood. The lab matches the sample to Nancy Guthrie. This physical evidence completely destroys the wandering theory. An elderly woman did not simply walk into the desert night. She was actively bleeding on her own doorstep. The stains indicate a sudden physical trauma. The pattern suggests a violent struggle at the threshold. The suspect approached with military precision. The actual extraction was incredibly messy. The 84-year-old widow fought back. The confrontation leaves a biological signature. The investigators push deeper into the residence. They meticulously process the interior rooms. The search yields a far more complicated forensic puzzle. They locate a crucial biological sample inside the home. The technicians extract DNA from the crime scene. The initial analysis presents a massive hurdle. The sample is not a clean profile. It is a highly complex DNA mixture. Multiple genetic profiles overlap within a single microscopic swab. The state crime labs face a severe limitation. Standard forensic algorithms struggle to untangle mixed DNA rapidly. They require weeks to isolate individual markers. Nancy Guthrie does not have weeks. She barely has hours. The missing daily medication creates a brutal biological deadline. The pacemaker keeps her heart beating. The lack of prescription drugs threatens to stop it entirely. The FBI makes a critical tactical decision. They bypass the backlogged government facilities. They send the mixed DNA samples to specialized private laboratories. These private facilities utilize advanced probabilistic genotyping. They deploy supercomputers to separate the overlapping genetic strands. The technology is incredibly expensive. The processing speed is significantly faster. The private labs operate around the clock. The technicians run the complex software models continuously. They attempt to isolate the suspect genetic fingerprint from the victim profile. The biological clock ticks relentlessly alongside the digital investigation. Every single hour degrades the survival probability of an injured hostage. The blood on the porch confirms a physical wound. The severity of the injury remains entirely unknown. A minor laceration on a healthy adult is manageable. The exact same injury on an elderly cardiac patient is potentially lethal. The physical evidence proves she was violently taken. The forensic reality intensifies the manhunt exponentially. The digital team hunts for ghost data. The physical team hunts for escape routes. The biological team races to untangle the DNA mixture. The coordination is massive. The pressure from the $1 million reward generates thousands of useless tips. Investigators must filter the noise to find the signal. The blood confirms an attack occurred. The logic of the crime begins to severely fracture. The established facts start contradicting each other. The tactical preparation points to a highly skilled operative. The suspect knew the camera blind spots. They utilized the prairie brush perfectly. They maintained absolute light discipline. They carried a firearm with clear intent. The execution of the breach was undeniably professional. The target selection makes absolutely no logical sense. The suspect profile violently clashes with the victim profile. An intelligent extortionist seeks maximum leverage with minimum risk. Kidnapping an 84-year-old woman is the highest possible risk. The logistical nightmare of moving a fragile hostage is staggering. The suspect must transport an uncooperative victim through harsh desert terrain. They must secure a secondary location. They must manage severe medical vulnerabilities. The stress of the abduction alone could trigger a fatal cardiac event. A deceased hostage possesses zero ransom value. The entire extortion leverage evaporates if Nancy dies in transit. A professional operative understands this fundamental rule. They calculate the risk to reward ratio meticulously. The ratio here is completely broken. Why bypass an impenetrable digital security system to abduct a high-risk medical patient? If the ultimate goal is extorting Savannah Guthrie for millions, the strategy is deeply flawed. A calculated criminal would target a healthier family member. They would minimize the chance of an accidental homicide charge. The contradictions multiply rapidly within the war room. The investigators debate the conflicting evidence intensely. One faction argues for a highly trained mercenary. They point to the flawless camera defeat. They highlight the tactical use of the environment. Another faction argues for a desperate amateur. They point to the chaotic physical struggle on the porch. They highlight the massive risk of the target selection. The suspect brought a gun to subdue an octogenarian. Did they anticipate armed resistance from a widow? Or did they expect someone else to be inside the house? Tommaso Cioni dropped her off at 10 o'clock. The suspect attacked at nearly 2 in the morning. They watched the house for hours. They knew she was completely alone. The deliberate choice to take Nancy defies standard criminal behavior. The theories constantly collide. The armchair detectives dissect the prairie brush detail endlessly. They argue about military backgrounds and forensic countermeasures. The tension sustains itself through these aggressive contradictions. The case refuses to fit into a neat psychological box. The evidence presents a phantom who is simultaneously a tactical genius and a strategic idiot. The physical search of the Catalina foothills continues to yield nothing. The private DNA labs continue to run their massive computations. The family continues to wait in agonizing silence. The national media amplifies every single contradiction. The pressure cooker environment threatens to break the investigation. The silence of the desert feels incredibly heavy. The suspect holds all the cards. The authorities hold fragmented video and mixed blood. The professional assassin theory begins to crumble under the weight of logical scrutiny. A true professional would have established secure communication immediately. They would provide proof of life to validate the $1 million demand. They would dictate the terms of the exchange from a position of absolute power. The days drag on with zero direct contact. The silence is deafening. The lack of communication suggests panic. It suggests a botched operation. The suspect is completely off the grid. The entire narrative feels permanently stalled. The tension stretches to the absolute breaking point. The silence is finally shattered. The suspect makes their very first move. A message finally materializes out the darkness. The intense psychological pressure finally fractures the silence. A message materializes out of the digital ether in mid-February. The suspect makes their highly anticipated ransom demand. The authorities are fully prepared for a burner phone call. The family is waiting for an encrypted dark web link. The actual method of contact completely shatters all logical expectations. The kidnapper does not contact the federal investigators. They do not reach out to Savannah Guthrie directly. They do not utilize a secure intermediary. An email demanding millions of dollars lands in the inbox of TMZ. The perpetrator actively chooses a celebrity gossip tabloid as their primary negotiator. This single decision sends shockwaves through the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. The tactical mastermind from the porch suddenly behaves like a reckless amateur. The contradiction is entirely blinding. A professional operative isolates their high-value victim. A seasoned kidnapper controls the communication flow with absolute precision. They establish a direct and private line with the family. They utilize highly encrypted channels to contact law enforcement. Sending a multi-million-dollar extortion demand to a public tabloid is a chaotic and massive escalation. This bizarre choice is a massive virality trigger for the public. The internet immediately erupts with wildly conflicting theories. Psychologists dissect the target selection intensely. Does this specific suspect crave media infamy more than the actual ransom money? TMZ guarantees instant global headlines within minutes. The FBI Cyber Division aggressively shifts focus to this new digital trail. They tear the email headers apart, searching for an origin IP address. They trace the complex routing data through multiple international servers. They heavily analyze the specific cryptocurrency wallets listed in the demand. Cryptocurrency is widely misunderstood as completely anonymous. It actually leaves a permanent and public digital ledger. A truly sophisticated criminal understands the blockchain is highly traceable. Extorting millions of dollars via digital currency requires incredibly complex laundering networks. The content of the TMZ message is scrutinized line by line. Investigators search frantically for a genuine proof of life. Does the sender possess secret knowledge about the crime scene? Do they know something only the true kidnapper could possibly know? Or is this a cruel and opportunistic hoax? The highly public nature of this case attracts severe digital parasites. Trolls and scammers frequently claim responsibility for high-profile tragedies. The federal agents must urgently authenticate the author of the email. If the tabloid message is entirely genuine, the suspect profile changes drastically. The cold and clinical phantom morphs into a desperate attention seeker. The red herring theory gains massive traction among independent analysts. Perhaps the TMZ email is a deliberate and calculated distraction. The real perpetrator might simply be buying more time. They flood the investigative zone with digital noise. The ensuing media circus consumes vast amounts of valuable federal resources. The tactical mismatch remains deeply infuriating. The individual who flawlessly defeated the smart home system seems fundamentally different. They do not match the profile of the person writing a tabloid extortion email. The authorities consider the possibility of a highly coordinated team. Does one suspect handle the physical extraction at the residence? Does a separate suspect manage the digital extortion campaign remotely? The absolute lack of operational security in this communication is baffling. It introduces severe and unnecessary risk for the perpetrators. The tension aggressively shifts from the physical desert to the digital media landscape. The stakes feel somehow even higher now. The psychological warfare is actively escalating in real time. The suspect is seemingly toying with the American public. They are taunting the highest levels of law enforcement through the press. The situation spirals completely away from a standard kidnapping framework. The investigation becomes a bizarre and dangerous media spectacle. The life of an 84-year-old grandmother hangs in the balance. The rapid transition from a silent intruder to a loud extortionist is deeply disturbing. The tabloid ransom demand creates a massive spike in public urgency. The subsequent radio silence is even more terrifying. The email ultimately provides no immediate path to a physical rescue. The digital investigators hit solid brick walls in the server routing. The cryptocurrency wallets remain entirely empty and unmoving. The sensational tabloid headline slowly fades into the endless news cycle. The investigation is forcefully pushed back to the physical reality of the crime. The digital noise eventually settles into a grim quiet. The focus rigidly returns to the hard forensic evidence. This brings the investigation to the agonizing present reality. Today is day 68 of the disappearance. The search enters a grueling and highly technical new phase. We must examine exactly where this investigation stands right now. The Federal Command Center remains highly active around the clock. The massive physical grid searches in the desert have largely concluded. The harsh terrain has yielded absolutely nothing usable. The entire focus is deeply data-driven at this exact moment. The FBI is pulling massive amounts of telecommunications data. They are currently executing sweeping geofence warrants across the Catalina foothills. They demand extensive cell tower dumps from the night of January 31st. They are tracking every single mobile device in the area. They monitor the pings surrounding the 1:47 a.m. digital blackout. This constitutes an ocean of raw digital information. Agents manually sift through thousands of anonymous phone records. They aggressively look for the one burner device that breaks the pattern. They hunt for the single signal that does not belong in that neighborhood. The private laboratories are still running their advanced probabilistic DNA models. The complex biological mixture from the home refuses to yield easily. The computing power is maxed out, isolating the suspect genetic fingerprint. The rigorous scientific process simply cannot be artificially rushed. The waiting period is absolute psychological torture for the surviving family. The $1 million reward remains fully active and heavily publicized. It sits completely untouched in a secure escrow account. The money is a massive financial incentive for anyone holding a secret. The ongoing silence strongly implies the suspect is entirely isolated. They seemingly have no accomplices to betray their location. They possess no weak links within their immediate social circle. The medical reality of the victim is the heaviest burden of all. The biological window for a safe medical recovery closed many weeks ago. The internal pacemaker requires routine medical maintenance. The human body requires specific daily prescription medication to survive. The statistical survivability for an elderly abduction is incredibly grim. The authorities publicly refuse to classify this as a simple recovery mission. They rigorously maintain the aggressive posture of an active rescue operation. They keep the immense pressure fully applied on all investigative fronts. Two massive questions remain entirely unanswered tonight. First, who is the tactical phantom captured on the Google backend data? The suspect possesses specific lethal skills and extreme ruthlessness. They are still walking freely among the general public right now. Second, where exactly is Nancy Guthrie? The vast Arizona landscape hides its dark secrets flawlessly. The suspect managed to vanish with a fragile hostage completely unseen. They left absolutely no traceable physical trail in the desert dirt. The severe contradictions in the suspect behavior keep the profiling units working overtime. The investigation is a grueling, slow burn of digital forensics and biology. The neighborhood cameras are continuously watching the quiet streets. The federal agents are continuously hunting the dark digital shadows. The reality of the situation is incredibly stark and unforgiving. A highly violent predator is currently operating completely off the grid. They successfully breached a supposedly secure digital home environment. They engaged in a violent physical altercation on a front porch. They executed a high-stakes abduction of a vulnerable target. They remain entirely unidentified and completely at large. This is not a closed chapter in a history book. This is a highly active and deeply dangerous threat environment. The perceived vulnerability of the modern smart home is fully exposed. The technological shields are proven completely fallible against a prepared mind. The suspect is out there. The attack on the Guthrie residence tears down a massive illusion of modern domestic security. Millions of households operate under a highly dangerous assumption every single night. They believe purchasing a smart doorbell instantly fortifies their physical perimeter. This ongoing investigation proves that consumer hardware without secure cloud architecture is essentially useless. The recording device becomes nothing more than an expensive plastic ornament on a wall. A tactical predator easily recognizes and exploits this exact technological vulnerability. They know the vast majority of consumers ignore the monthly data storage fees. You must aggressively audit your own residential security protocols immediately. Relying solely on basic motion sensors represents a critical point of failure. You need overlapping layers of both technological and physical defense systems. Ensure your camera networks maintain continuous and encrypted off-site recording. Verify that your local wireless router possesses maximum security protocols. Install heavy secondary physical deadbolts on every single exterior entry point. The suspect bypassed the digital perimeter because the hardware was artificially blinded. They utilize the native desert vegetation to defeat the optical lens entirely. This specific tactical choice teaches a brutal lesson about environmental awareness around your home. You must proactively clear any dense brush or potential blind spots near your primary entrances. Sophisticated criminals actively look for natural cover to mask their final approach. The illusion of absolute safety in affluent suburban neighborhoods is completely shattered by this crime. Wealth and gated communities do not deter a highly motivated and prepared. They simply force the attacker to elevate the tactics required for the initial breach. What this case teaches us about criminal psychology is profoundly disturbing. A predator will always find the path of least digital resistance. Understanding these precise behavioral patterns is your most effective line of defense. This analytical knowledge actively protects your family from a similar intrusion tonight, but for the elderly victim taken into the night, the clock continues to run down. We will cover every single development of this investigation, the absolute second it breaks. The private forensic teams are still fighting through the highly complex biological data. The federal cyber units are still tearing through massive amounts of regional cellular traffic. The bizarre ransom demand sent to a tabloid remains a glaring psychological puzzle. Drop your own theory about that specific digital extortion attempt down in the comments below. Is the tabloid message a deliberate misdirection or a fatal operational error by the suspect? We need to analyze every possible angle of this erratic communication. The immediate survival window for an elderly cardiac patient closed many weeks ago. The brutal reality of the medical situation requires absolute investigative honesty. The massive financial bounty has not cracked the silence of the perpetrator. The initial system blackout occurred in the early morning hours of January 31st. The digital ghost eventually captured a masked figure preparing for a violent breach. The blood left on the concrete confirmed the desperate physical struggle at the threshold. Yet, the ultimate physical destination of the suspect remains entirely unknown to law enforcement. Dozens of days have passed without a single verifiable proof of life. The neighborhood cameras are constantly watching the quiet residential streets. The federal task forces are relentlessly hunting the dark digital shadows. But the sprawling Arizona desert is still keeping its secret perfectly. Stay vigilant.